Good evening, everyone. It's so lovely to see you here on this beautiful evening. Thank you very much for coming, and welcome to Brighton Reading Room at One Church, Five Ways. We do have a treat in store, but my job is to tell you where the loos are. So the loos are, there's an accessible loo at the back through those doors on the left, and there are several loos down through there, and you'll find them through a couple of doors. I'm now going to introduce our MC or compere for the evening, Isabel Frey. Isabel is a community organizer and artist from Philadelphia, now living in London. They are currently completing a book in collaboration with UK student organizers. The book is called Until Palestine is Free, Lessons from a Student Intifada, and it's due out this spring. Isabel.
Thank you. That's nice. Okay. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see so many faces here. I'm really here to just orient you all to the evening, what you can expect. So, we're here for revolutionary Yiddish culture, relevance for today's world with Isabel Frey, who's here from Austria. Very exciting. She will be coming out in a moment, and she will be in conversation with David Rosenberg, who's here from London as well, and will be accompanied for one song with Brighton-based violinist Rob Rosenthal. So it will be a great evening. And then, as you can see over there, there's food from a local Palestinian-owned Cafe Aroma, so we'll be eating and having a shared meal after the show. This evening is also a fundraiser for Ele Elna Elak, a Palestinian volunteer-driven campaign providing water and fresh food to displaced families across Gaza. So all proceeds from the ticket sales today went to them, and if you look in the back, there's a table. You'll be able to donate more, which would be great. We're hoping to raise a lot of money for them today. We're also kindly asking that you not film or take photos during the event. The Brighton Reading Room will be taking photos and videoing, so yeah, we just kindly ask that you keep your phones away. And now I will introduce David and Isabel so you can hear a bit about them before they come on. David Rosenberg has been active in socialist, anti-racist, and anti-fascist activism since the mid-1970s, especially through the Jewish Socialist Group. He is also an educator, writer, and tour guide specializing in London's radical history, and in recent years has helped to lead educational visits to Krakow, Auschwitz, and the Warsaw Ghetto for trade unionists, students, and anti-racist activists. He is currently on the National Committee for the Jewish Socialist Group and is one of the co-founders of the Jewish Bloc for Palestine. And Isabel Frey is a Yiddish singer, ethnomusicologist, and political activist based in Vienna. In her search for a secular and politicized Jewish identity in the diaspora, she discovered the Yiddish music tradition. Frey has since been widely acclaimed internationally for her Yiddish singing. In 2020, she released her debut album, Millenial Bundist, and her newest album, Die Fliendike Pave, was released last year by the New York Yiddish music label Borscht Beat. In addition to her musical work, Isabel Frey is also active as an academic curator and organizer, including as curator of KlezMORE Festival Vienna and founder of the art collective One State Embassy. So please give a very, very warm welcome to Isabel.
Was schläft ihr Schläfer, steht auf. Was schläft ihr Schläfer so lang? Geht nur a Kuck zum Himmel rauf, wie schön ist die Sonne noch ihr Aufgang. Genug schön zu halten, die Loden vermacht. Was schläft ihr Schläfer in der finsteren Nacht? Genug schön zu schlafen, ihr Schwester und Brüder. Steht auf der Mond stille ohne Geruder seht das alle sollen sein gleich. Wir werden gehasst und getrieben, wir werden gejagt und verfolgt, und als nur der Pfarrer wir lieben, das arme schmachtende Volk, und als nur der Pfarrer wir lieben, das arme schmachtende Volk. Wir werden erschossen, gehangen, man räubt uns das Leben unrecht, der Pfarrer, weil wir es verlangen, und Freiheit verloren Knecht, der Pfarrer, weil wir es verlangen, und Freiheit verloren Knecht. Aber uns wird nicht der Schrecken, Gefängnis und Tyrannei. Wir müssen die Menschheit erwecken und machen sie glücklich und frei. Wir müssen die Menschheit erwecken und machen sie glücklich und frei. Schmied uns in eiserne Ketten, wie blutige Chais uns reißt. Ihr kennt unser Körper nur täten, nur keinmal unser heiligen Geist. Ihr kennt unser Körper nur täten, nur keinmal unser heiligen Geist. Ihr kennt uns der Morden, Tyrannen, neue Kämpfer wird bringen die Zeit. Und wir kämpfen bis wann die ganze Welt wird werden befreit. Und wir kämpfen bis wann die ganze Welt wird werden befreit.
Well, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to be here. This is really a great honor, a groß Vergnügen.
It's a great honor for me, really.
This is really.
great
And
honor.
I'm going to be asking some questions to Isabel. So I want to start with your personal journey. How did your journey towards playing Yiddish radical music begin? What were the steps on the way?
Yeah, so first of all, also from me, it's a really big honor to be here today, and yeah, I'm really excited. Also, already seeing how many people know the songs and want to sing along. That's great. That's the kind of energy I was hoping for. Yeah, I came to Yiddish music kind of by coincidence. That I just, you know, I was actually in a car of a friend who's, you know, kind of a distant friend, and there was an album playing of Yiddish music, and it was kind of an album from a German folk group that was a kind of like German reception of Yiddish music, Zupfgeigenhansel they're called.
Yeah.
And so I just heard, and it were actually two songs that kind of grabbed me, but the first one was actually Donna Donna that really grabbed me. That was the first song that I was like, oh wow, I'm very into this, something about this speaks to me. And then I went down the rabbit hole, so to say, about on revolutionary Yiddish song specifically. And it was a time life when I was living in Amsterdam. It was very politicized, kind of a politicized environment. I was active in like the squatting scene and in university protests and in kind of decolonial movements, and I felt very alienated from also the conservative Jewish synagogue that I'd grown up in Vienna, and also kind of the like mainstream Zionist environment, and I was feeling like there's no real space for me to be Jewish in leftist movements, or I don't really know how to be, but I also don't know how to be a leftist in Jewish spaces. And so then finding this repertoire was for me kind of like a healing. It was something healing, but it was also something, wow, I need this now. This speaks to me in a very particular way at this moment. And that's how I just kind of started getting into it.
There's a strange coincidence, because in the early 1980s I started to collect Yiddish vinyl. And that was the first album I had.
Okay,
the same band, same album, and it was amazing. One of the questions I wanted to ask really is who, once you started your singing Yiddish songs, who do you see as your audience? Who do you write and perform music for?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when I started performing, it was really mostly kind of protest. I really started also as a protest singer, again, performing at protests. I had, taught myself how to sing basically, and taught myself how to play guitar, and just started playing at the first thing I played at was a kind of ad hoc university, like tent occupation before they called it encampment. It was kind of against the neoliberalization of the university in Amsterdam, and then I started singing there, and then I had my first concert in a squatted house in Amsterdam. So at first it was really kind of this like leftist, politically activist audience that I also wanted to show a different side of Jewish culture basically. And then over time, it's turned into a interesting mixed audience, particularly in Vienna. So it is also a lot of kind of people from like the more old left, but also some younger leftists sometimes that get into it. It's people who are interested in klezmer and Yiddish music generally, and then that also gives them a bit of a different side. Sometimes it's also Jewish communities. It's really depends on the context, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I have another song that is a bit also again from that more earlier origin, the early stages, I would say, of when I started singing. And it's like the first song that I sung. Well, it was kind of a mashup. One is a kind of orally transmitted socialist song out from the repertoire from Fegül Sultan, who was from Eastern Europe and kind of from a shtetl and was active in socialist movements and had that song in her repertoire, and it was on the recorded by Ruth Rubin, who was a very important ethnomusicologist working in Canada in already basically from the 1940s up until the 1970s, and she recorded the song, and it's on a great archive that is to be found online, the Ruth Rubin archive. Then I combined it with In Kampf, which a lot of you know, which is great. It's kind of like workers' struggle anthem by David Edelstadt, who was a very, very well-known kind of folk poet and Jewish anarchist who came from the Russian Empire, emigrated to the United States. And what I like about him is also that he also learned Yiddish as an adult, which many people do nowadays also, but we don't tend to think about it that was also already the case in the late 19th century. And what is also nice is this next song is also by David Edelstadt, and it's very old. It's a poem that was published in 1891, and it's specifically about also workers, women's workers, yeah. and it's also striking because it's women, working women, that work at home and the factory. So it's this like double burden that a lot of women or non-binary people still continue to have with this kind of unequal, still very unequal distribution of labor and the reproductive care, basically. And what is also interesting about it, I think it's great that there was this very, that there was a male socialist in the late 19th century writing these songs. That's great. It's also a bit, I'll say it from if you read the text, you'll see maybe it's a bit, by today's standards, something like mansplaining, It's like, oh, you women, why don't you stand up? I'm just going to say that because it's okay, I think, also to hold people up, also in the 19th century, to hold them up to other standards sometimes, even if what they do is a good thing. It's Arbeiterfreu, and if you also know the song, please feel free to sing along or hum along. It also has a short nigging part, I guess, that people have started to sing. Arbeiterfreuen, leidende Freuen, Freuen, was schmachten in Haus und Fabrik, was steht dir von Weiten, was helft dir nicht bauen, den Tempel von Freiheit, von menschlichem Glück, helft uns tragen dem Banner, dem Reuten, vorwärts durch Sturm, durch finstere Nacht, helft uns Wahrheit und Licht zu verspreiten, zwischen unwissende Ernte Knecht. Ja, rei, 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 helft uns die Welt von ihr Schmutz erheben, alles opfern, was uns ist lieb, kämpfen zusammen wie mächtige Leben, für Freiheit, für Gleichheit, für unser Prinzip. Nicht einmal haben schon noble Freuen gemacht, Zittern, Henker und Thron. Sie haben gezeigt, dass man kann sie vertreuen, in bittersten Sturm die heilige Fon. Ja, rei, 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 rei.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And I want to ask a couple of questions about Yiddish, really, and particularly about the revival of interest in Yiddish culture among radical Jews. What is that about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's about a lot of different things, and different people have different routes to get to Yiddish. I think one of the things is definitely this association between Yiddish and diaspora, and a kind of a desire that I think a lot of radical or left-wing Jews have to kind of rediscover what it means to be Jewish in the diaspora, that is not kind of negatively defined, that is not defined as a lack, that is not just defined in relation to the state of Israel. What is interesting if we think about the Jewish diaspora is, I mean, the Jewish diaspora has existed for 2,000 of years, and the State of Israel not very long. And we use the term diaspora today always as if originating from a nation state, but actually the term has a different origin, and that's what's very interesting, I think, in thinking about Jewish diaspora and what some people call diasporism, right? So kind of the belief that Jewish culture flourishes in the diaspora, and then by extension we can see a lot of places in the world also as diaspora. We can also see Palestine as diaspora, like as a collection of a lot of different diasporas, for example. And maybe for some, I guess for me, definitely it was this desire, the sense of lack, also the kind of hurt that comes from realizing that, if you're not religious, if you're not, kind of like Zionist identifying yourself with like the nationalist symbols of the State of Israel, and you're not, I don't know, like you're not yeah, basically that's the two options that you have. You can become religious, or I don't know, maybe just like into cooking, but even cooking is connected to even the question is like, where does the food come from, and what culture is it connected to? So I think then you quickly kind of discover what was erased also, and what is continuously kind of being forgotten, and that's what brought me to Yiddish. But and then it might come from a more simplistic opposition at first, but then I think what a lot of what happens is, for a lot of people, they discover the kind of depth of Yiddish culture and of other Jewish diaspora cultures, and of generally just kind of seeing what happens when culture doesn't come, in like a neat package with an anthem and a flag, but it's all spread over in archives and I don't know, books that are lying around, old books that are lying around somewhere, and there comes an immense creativity with that, and I think that's also what a lot of people are attracted to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that diaspora is seen in very positive terms, but I was wondering also how the more mainstream Austrian Jewish community, how do they look at Yiddish today?
Yeah. I mean, what is important to say is that the mainstream Austrian Jewish community, the Jewish community in Austria, it's kind of a composition of various diasporas also, because it kind of rebooted, we would say in 1945, kind of out of the ashes of the Holocaust in a way. A lot of survivors that came back also. I mean, a lot of survivors that obviously also didn't come back, but emigrated somewhere else. Then there are also large communities from the former Soviet Union, so Bukharian Jewish communities, Georgian Jewish community. There's a mix between Yiddish-speaking Jews with Yiddish-speaking ancestry from Eastern Europe, and then there's the more kind of Central European Jewish line of lineage, which is also what my family is from. They're not Yiddish, I don't have any Yiddish in my family heritage. I interviewed my grandmother, and I went back pretty far, and I asked like, oh, but come on, there must have been some Yiddish. No Yiddish. We didn't like Yiddish. That was only for the Hasidic people, basically. They were Hungarian-speaking Jews, and for Hungarian-speaking Jews, it was also similarly to German-speaking Jews. It was very separated, kind of the Yiddish, and there was also like basically the more middle class, or I don't know, even if you were religious, but if you were not Hasidic, people generally spoke Hungarian, and so in a way Yiddish has a history in Vienna, but also not so much. It has a history also mostly through kind of a lot of immigration in the early 20th century, and there's not so much living memory of that. So the Jewish community in general, I would say, is not so interested in Yiddish, but it's also understandable why, for especially a community that has a lot of Bukharian Jews, for example, why that wouldn't be so interesting for them. On some level, I think it's also just, it is a bit of a part of this kind of Western Jewish rejection of Yiddish that is also a bit still part of it. And then there's also immense nostalgia on some other level, you know, that everyone's like, oh, Yiddish, that's very cute, and that's, kind of sweet, but I don't know, don't really care about it so much. And in terms of the politics, I mean, I always felt like I could communicate a lot more in politics if it was in Yiddish, even if I translated it, or like if I, communicated it through Yiddish culture. I felt like I could do a lot more, I could do a lot more, make a lot more political statements. It was also just kind of towards my quite bourgeois Jewish family that suddenly all of my revolutionary ideas were more palatable, if I sing something like In Kampf and you can kill our bodies, but you're never gonna kill our souls, and that was suddenly okay for them. So I think that's also a bit part of a phenomenon that it allows you suddenly a bit more space. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. I have a song, so I basically already gave it, what is it? A disclaimer on the song. Oh yeah, you already have the song. Okay, that's why. Everyone's like, yeah. So basically, if we're thinking about what does the Jewish community, if they don't know Yiddish at all, they will know this song. Obviously, I think maybe a lot of you know it, Donna Donna. It was really one of the songs that it was the first Yiddish song that I heard. It's interesting, I feel like among contemporary Yiddish musicians, I don't know so many people, especially of my mentors and friends that sing this song. It's a bit like, no, not Donna Donna, like that's like Affen Prippeschik. You cannot sing these songs that have been so overplayed. I continue to sing this song in a lot of concerts. I just think it's a great song, and especially some songs that are so, that have such a, that's where such a seed, they kind of stay with you. So this is also a good sing-along song. It is from the Yiddish theater. The text is by Aaron Zeitlin. It is not from resistance movements in Eastern Europe, as is often thought, but it's from the same time as the partisans were fighting, and obviously the themes are very resonant. And yeah, I play the same, I borrowed the arrangement by Joan Baez, which I really love, and that was really how it all started. Auf den Fuhre liegt das Kälber, liegt gebunden mit der Strick, euch in Himmel fliegt das Schwälber, dreht sich hin und Krieg, lacht der Wind in Choren, lacht und lacht und lacht, lacht der Obertag a ganzen und a halbere Nacht. Donna, 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 Donna. Donna, 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 Donna. Schreit das Kälber, sagt der Poier, wer sie hastig seiner Kalb, wollt's gekannt zu seiner Vogel, wollt's gekannt zu seiner Schwalb, lacht der Wind in Korn, lacht und lacht und lacht, lacht der Obertag a ganzen und a halbere Nacht. Donna, 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 Donna. Bidne tut man behinden und man schleppt sie und man schächt. Wer's hat Fliegel, fliegt rauf zu, ist bei keinem nicht kein Knecht. Lacht der Wind in Korn, lacht und lacht und lacht, lacht der Opa ganzen und a halber Nacht. Donna, 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 donna. Donna, 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 donna.
That was very beautiful. And you mentioned about Joan Baez as taking her musical version there. But I wanted to ask you about the Yiddish singers and performers that have inspired you. Who are those people, and who do you really enjoy listening to?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very, very long list of people. Some of them in this room. Paulina Shepard is somewhere in this room. I don't know. It's definitely one of the singers that deeply, deeply inspires me. I just want to say. Oh yeah, Paulina's back there. Wow. One of my favorite singers. I will just say it at that. I mean, definitely, you know, I'm sure you all know also just from my repertoire, those that know Yiddish music and know Yiddish revolutionary songs, that my biggest inspiration in that has been Daniel Kahn. It's basically, I think Daniel Kahn's music functions as a gateway drug for a lot of Jewish leftists into Yiddish, and that's really. It's so important. It's so important what his music has done in that, you know, that it's just keeps bringing people in, and I think Dan Kahn's work was also really because it had this, you know, the revolutionary edge and really went into this repertoire, but also the whole. The creative approach to song, what he sometimes calls like Liederschmieden, you know, like word, like what is it called, like blacksmith, like a song blacksmith, you know, that you start to maybe translate some songs and change them a bit, but tradaptation, that's also a term that he uses a lot, and that has been a huge inspiration. I will sing also some songs by Josh Waletsky, who has been a huge influence on me also, and a huge mentor, who is a wonderful songwriter and also activist and Bundist. We will still speak about that, but I'm just going to name a few people who, you know, if you know them, that's great, and if you don't know them, you can immediately start to Google them. But especially people also like Sasha Lurie in Berlin, and Sveta Kundish, and Ethel Rehm, who has also been a huge mentor and teacher for me, and I never got to meet Adrienne Cooper, but I listened to a lot of her music, of course, and Lawrence Glamberg and the KlezMatics. So I don't know, the list is really long. I'm now thinking, oh, who am I forgetting? It's I don't know. It's a whole, also like a community of people, it's mentors and friends, and it's all kind of a mix, and people are very generous also with their time and their guidance. So I've also just learned it's not just that I like to listen to their music, but I've really actively learned a lot from these singers. Yeah,
that's a very, very interesting list actually, and as well as having the honor of interviewing you here tonight, I had the honor to interview Daniel Kahn a couple of years ago for Jewish Socialist magazine. And maybe, I don't know, maybe an easier question, I hope, rather than that you don't have to shuffle a list, is what is your favorite Yiddish revolutionary song?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I do like a lot of. Also, I mean, I will speak about this later also, but it's also a good question. What is a revolutionary Yiddish song? You know, what makes a revolutionary Yiddish song? And I think I've also been experimenting with the boundaries of that a lot and kind of deconstructing the boundaries of that a lot. I think when I entered in, I had a more kind of rigid idea. If it's about worker struggle, then it's a revolutionary song. And I was like, well, but that's also not my politics so much. It's not, you know, it's not only revolutionary if it's about a worker struggle. There are also other other themes and topics and approaches but yeah, my favorite song I think to this day is, and that's also a song, the second song that I heard on that said album in that car, but also a song that I learned from Daniel Kahn is Arbeitslosenmarsch, the you know song, the March of the Unemployed. That was definitely from the beginning my favorite song, and it continues to be you know a song that I just love to perform it. Yeah, I don't perform it every time, but I perform it very often. It's also something that people really like. Also inspired by Dan Kahn, I also wrote a German kind of tradaptation. But I just realized now, I was like, oh, I usually sing that one, but that doesn't work here. So I'm just gonna borrow his English translation and sing that here, the English tradaptation also. It's not a literal translation. And Arbeitslosenmarsch was written by Mordechai Gebirtig, who was, very incredibly talented and active songwriter from Krakow, and wrote a lot of songs about a lot of different topics, you know, a lot of songs that came to be folklorized very quickly already, that people started to sing all over the Yiddish-speaking world, and a lot of his songs also really had a socialist theme to it, because he was also you know an active socialist in some ways, and yeah, that's the song that I will sing. Eins, zwei, drei, vier, Arbeitslose sehnen mir, nicht gehört, Chadosh im Lang, in Fabrik den Hammerklang, es liegen Keil im Kalt vergessen, es nennt der Javarization fressen, gehen mir arum in Gas, wie die Gewirr im Pust und Pass, wie die Gewirr im Pust und Pass. Eins, zwei, drei, vier, Arbeitslose sehnen mir, ohne Beged, ohne Heim, unser Bett ist Erd und Leim, hat noch wer was zu genießen, teilt man sich mit jedem Bissen, Wasser wie die Gewirr im Wein, gießen wir in sich herein, gießen wir in sich herein. Eins, zwei, drei, vier, Arbeitslose sehnen mir, jahrelang gearbeitet schwer und geschafft als mehr und mehr. Heiser, Schlösser, Städt und Länder, fahre Heifele Verschwender, unser Leunder, fahre es wuss, hingerneut und arbeitlos, hingerneut und arbeitlos. 1, 2, 3, 4, join the marching jobless corps. No work in the factories, no more manufacturing. All the tools are broken, rusted, every wheel and window busted. Through the city streets we go, idle as a CEO, idle as a CEO. 1, 2, 3, 4, join the marching jobless corps. We don't have to pay no rent, sleeping in a camping tent. Dumpster diving, don't take money, every bite we share with 20. Let them yuppies have their wine, bread and water suit us fine, bread and water suit us fine. 1, 2, 3, 4. Join the marching jobless corps. Worked and paid our union dues. What did years of that produce? Houses, cars, and other shit for the rich's benefit. What do workers get for pay? Hungry, broke, and thrown away. Hungry, broke, and thrown away. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pick yourselves up off the floor. Unemployment marches on, so we'll sing a marching song from a land, a world of justice, where no boss or cop can bust us. There'll be work for every hand in a new and better land, in a new and better land. Oi, 1, 2, 3, 4, und so marschieren wir. Arbeitslose tritt noch tritt und wir singen sich ein Lied. Fin a Land, a Welt, a neue, wo es leben Menschen freie. Arbeitslos ist kein Schumhand in dem neuen freien Land, in dem neuen freien Land, in dem neuen freien Land, in dem neuen freien Land.
And if that song doesn't inspire you to revolution, I don't know what will. But I was very excited when I saw the title of your first CD, Millenial Bundist. Full disclosure here, ich bin a Bundist. I'm a Bundist. Proud to be one. But what do the terms Bundism and Bundist mean to you in 2025?
Yeah. That's a good question. So maybe just to explain for those that don't know, the Bundism refers to the Jewish Labor Bund, which was the largest socialist Jewish party, political party in Eastern Europe, specifically in what was then Poland, Lithuania, Russia, and it was a huge, for its time, huge movement. And it was also staunchly kind of Yiddishist, so it was promoting the Yiddish use of the Yiddish language and culture and the promotion of that among workers. But it was also not nationalist. Basically, it was anti-nationalist. It was in some ways anti-Zionist, not in the terms that we would think about it today. It was basically saying, well, Zionism is this kind of utopian, but also kind of bourgeois movement, and it's kind of a cop-out rather than, fighting for socialism where we are. It's this, we should all settle in Palestine and build socialism there. And it was this idea of, it's kind of, being pushed by the bourgeoisie. But it was both anti-Zionist and both anti-assimilationist. So it was also not supporting those voices that were, suggesting for Jewish socialists, Jewish communists to kind of just join the respective national communist parties in different languages. And it had some kind of vision, there were obviously it was a big movement. There were different visions of kind of different forms of cultural autonomy in the diaspora. And I would say, there is a kind of neo-Bundist revival that has been happening definitely in the past decade or so, more explicitly. It's not about rebuilding the party of the Jewish Labor Bund as being kind of carried by the Jewish proletariat in Eastern Europe, because that's not the situation where we're in. But there actually has been a literal revival of the Jewish Labor Bund as a transnational organization, as a party, which is pretty amazing, which I didn't think was going to happen when I named my album Millenial Bundist. So, I kept always saying this thing about, it's not about actually reviving, but this is actually happening, so that's pretty great. But it is also a lot about how these ideas, and specifically the idea of Doigkeit, so here-ness, was a kind of a central Bundist concept. I would say that's the main resonant idea for people today who are interested in it, specifically coming from it from this diasporist perspective and thinking about how to, find ways to engage with Jewish culture that can also be, in solidarity with Palestine, or kind of, also oppose kind of Jewish ethno-nationalism in all its forms, and so that's definitely also what it means to me and what inspires me. I mean, I just never knew that something like the Bund existed. So at first it was also just for me to tell a story about the Bund and to kind of say, wow, this movement, this was real, this existed, and it is real also today, in a very different way, but it is also very real. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I think you're going to play a Bundist song.
Yes, I did say. I mean, that I just kind of, pushed in last minute. We don't have a translation slide for it, but I figured if we're going to talk about the Bund, it might make sense to sing the hymn of the Bund, Die Schwur, which maybe some people know. It was written by Szymanski, who was, also very important, like poet, ethnographer, a very long list of things, and basically, and it was the anthem of the movement. And so if people want to sing it, it's obviously, I also put it on my album. I don't sing it often because it's not so, I'm not often in a space where a lot of people know it and want to sing it, but that would be great. Yeah. Brüder und Schwester von Arbeit und Neud, alle, was seinen zersägt und zerspreit, zusammen, die von sie's gerät, sie flattert von Zorn, von Blut ist sie reut, a Schwur, auf Leben und Tod. Himmel und Erd wird uns Herren, das wird sein, die lichtige Stern, a Schwur von Blut und a Schwur von Tränen, wir schweren, wir schweren a Freiheit und Grenzen zum Bund, nur erkennbar freien die Sklaven a Zind, die von die Reute is heuch und breit, sie flattert von Zorn, von Blut is sie reut, a Schwur auf Leben und Tod. Himmel und Erd wird uns Herren, das wird sein, die lichtige Stern, a Schwur von Blut und a Schwur von Tränen, wir schweren, und a Schwur von Tränen, wir schweren.
Wonderful. And if you happen to be buying a CD of Millenial Bundist, there's also a pamphlet, a booklet there on the Bund, which tells you, which is written. It's got articles by people who are Bundists today, who are still alive, and also got articles by people who were in the Bund, who are no longer alive. But ask you a little bit more about how you personally encountered Bundism, how you came to those ideas.
It was definitely through the music also, and through kind of going down this rabbit hole of trying to find revolutionary Yiddish songs at first, really just via YouTube basically, and Reddit, and I don't know, other internet fora. And then I quickly came a bit to the history of the Bund. I mean, it was also then through that, I did some searching. I'm pretty sure one of the first links I also came across was by the London-based Jewish anarchist group Judas. That was, so that was also my first leftist, Jewish leftist encounter. That was for me when I found that website, and I was like, wow, this is so funny, and I'm not alone, and who are these people? And then a few years later, I guess that was, no, I think maybe not so long later, but maybe a few years later, I joined on my first Birth Wrong trip. It was 2017 to Marseille, and that was so great because I was suddenly surrounded by, until then I was really just doing that in my college dorm room alone. And then I joined on this trip, and they were all these Jewish leftists, and they all knew all the Yiddish songs that I knew, and they were like, oh, let's sing it together. And yeah, it was really great. I was also I could also co-organize a Birth Wrong trip a couple of years later to Amsterdam, where I was living at the time, where we stayed in a squatted bowling alley. I'm not sure. I'm not sure right now. Oh, Jeffrey Cohen. Oh, sorry, I was confused for a second. I was like, who's Jeffrey Cohen? Yes, I know who Jeffrey Cohen is. No, I never got to meet him, unfortunately, but yeah, I've heard great things about him. And of course, I followed the whole beetroot thing from afar. No, it was really great. I mean, okay, so that's a long story of how I got to Bundism, but it was through this, through this kind of grassroots organizing before I actually, first got myself some of the literature on the Bund, like Revolutionary Yiddish Land, which I thought was really interesting, kind of oral history account, not just of the Bund, but also of other leftist Jewish movements, and yeah, that's kind of how I started to discover it.
That's very interesting. And Judas are lovely comrades who have played a really significant role and continue to play a significant role in the Jewish radical tradition in Britain. And
I have another song. I have another song.
Yeah.
And and for the song, I will ask my new friend Rob to come on stage. We met an hour ago, basically, and and Rob is from Brighton, right? Yeah, and yeah, it's very nice that we can play together. I'm just going to introduce the song also, because it's not a classic Bundist or revolutionary song. It's maybe like a new Bundist song. That's at least what I would hope it is. But it's also an exercise for all of you. So maybe some of you know the famous quote by Frederick Jameson: "It's easier to remember the end of the world than the end of capitalism." Right? So we can have all these zombie movies and stuff like that, but no one can tell us really what another world could look like. And that's what I find so powerful about movements like the Bund, but also generally these revolutionary songs from the late 19th, early 20th centuries. People really believed that another world is possible, and it's gotten increasingly difficult. And the more we also just kind of spend our days on social media feeds, just seeing terrible images, it gets very hard imagining a new world. I think we kind of lost this ability. And so this song, it's a poetry setting. I set a poem by a poet named David Krivitsky, who was from the area of Belarus. And he's actually the great uncle of a friend of mine from the Yiddish music community, Gabe Zuckerberg, who's also an ethnomusicologist. And during the COVID pandemic, when everything was a lot online, he was basically asking me to help him translate some of the poetry. And David Krivitsky was a poet, but also revolutionary, and the song is called In Farnacht, at twilight, and it's kind of a, nostalgically reimagining or remembering back the time of a revolutionary desire, basically. That's what I would say, or that's how I understand it. And so, there will be the text, but it's actually not so important. So if you want to, you can just kind of lean back and close your eyes and try to train those utopian muscles in trying to imagine this better world that somehow works together on a planet, on a functioning planet that is not being destroyed, and whatever else might be in that world. And thank you, Rob, for joining me. Es morgen die Jahren, die Tage und die Wochen, wie Räder von Meilen, wie Choren von Sang, und schmeichelt das Leben, a Held von einem Nitzochen, was hat die Besiegte geklieben in Fang, und schmeichelt das Leben, a Held von einem Nitzochen, was hat die Besiegte geklieben in Fang. Nur es haben die Tage und die Wochen wie Sangen, geblieb ich amol in Frühling das Feld, wenn's haben gebreist und gesturmt verlangen, wenn's hat sich gefuhremt a freiere Welt, wenn's haben gebreist und gesturmt verlangen, wenn's hat sich gefuhremt a freiere Welt. Sie haben geblieht vor der Welt und vor deres in Licht von dem Morgen, in Tee von Beginn, da was kennst du wellen, noch mehr wie die Peres, was du hast getragen von eigenem Mind, da was kennst du wellen, noch mehr wie die Peres, was du hast getragen von eigenem Mind. Verstilt ist die Regung, es stummen Verlangen, das Herz ist beruhigt und weich der Gemüt. Uns ist heint im goldenen Blie von die Sangen. Uns ist heint die Schönheit und Reifkeit von Schnitt. Die Schönheit von Blie und die Reifkeit von Jahren, a sie ist gewähnt und a sie wird es sein, wie's morgen die Räder von Milden dem Korn, vermorgen, verspäter in der Sarein, wie's morgen die Räder von Milden dem Korn, vermorgen, verspäter in der Sarein. Thank you, Rob. Applause for Rob. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Everything that you've said so far talks to the fact that your Yiddish singing is linked with a wider politics, wider activism. How do you do that in a practical way? What kind of political events have you performed at?
Yeah, so maybe again, kind of returning to these beginnings. Like I said, that first protest was this kind of university protest. Another, I think, the second event that I performed at was also in the Netherlands, and it was a kind of blockade, like a camp and a blockade of kind of fracking in the north of the Netherlands. So it was like a climate justice camp, and it was also, I mean, it was particularly memorable for me because my performance was right after a situation where there was an escalation between the police and people who had like hung up banners on the fence it was actually like a gas truck park basically that we blocked, and to that fence they had hung up banners, and then the police came with dogs, and it was a very, very scary situation. And then right afterwards they were like, okay, now you play, now you perform. and I had also another song that I will sing later today, but it was like an anti-police song that I sung, and I sung a song about like partisan, anti-fascist resistance, and it was very, very powerful. My Yiddish was not very good at that time yet. I don't know. There are some videos online, and I'm like, oh no, please, no one should hear that. It was, it was good that some people also told me like, oh, you sing really nice, and how about you learn some Yiddish? It's like, that's very good. So that was also very necessary. But I mean, since then, yeah, I've performed, I started performing a lot at protests in Vienna. I don't know, like refugee solidarity protests, for example. There's been kind of a big movement against the locking up of refugees and for solidarity with refugees, and anti-fascist protests. We had a right-wing government. I will also talk about that later, so I won't take away that story. Different like feminist and queer feminist events, also benefits, for example, like fundraising events, fundraising for Kurdistan, for example, for Kurdish activists. Very different types of political events, I would say. Usually if I get invited by a protest or something like that, I mean, I started to then organize concerts, and a lot of the concerts, they're often very political concerts also, but that's one thing kind of in more regular concert settings, and I perform a lot also in concerts nowadays, but every time I get asked for a protest, of course, I do it. Yeah.
Great. And I know that among your activism, women's rights, women's equality is a very significant part of that. How do you see your work with Yiddish and Yiddish revolutionary songs and your advocacy for women's equality coming together?
I mean, I would say women's equality, yes, that's also definitely a part, but it's also more than that. It's really, I would call it like a queer feminism. So it's kind of also, a feminism that is not binary in its understanding, and that kind of sees also the struggles of kind of against heteronormativity intertwined with feminist politics and the struggle for trans rights, and that has from the beginning been also a part of it. I mean, that's basically was one of my initial issues that I encountered with this interest in revolutionary Yiddish songs, is that other than the song Arbeiterfreuen that directly speaks about working women, women's workers, but it's also written by a man in this a bit mansplaining tone. It was hard to see where kind of a contemporary feminist and queer feminist sensibility could come in with this repertoire, where a lot of it is kind of we all know that, especially in these socialist movements in the past, but also still often today, it's very kind of cis male dominated sometimes, and yeah, as a result, also that gets reflected in the songs. So I started to kind of question more what is a revolutionary Yiddish song, what makes a revolutionary Yiddish song, you know, and how to maybe also open that up, that definition. And so yeah, I started to find more and more songs that connected to me. It also, you know, it brought me more to different kinds of repertoires that are just not explicitly political, but maybe implicitly. A lot of the kind of also orally transmitted repertoire, like love songs and lullabies, that also was one of the main research focus, basically as a researcher. And I'm very interested in these songs also because a lot of them are direct narrations of women's experiences under patriarchy, and so they really open up a different kind of window into the world of Yiddish song. Yeah, I have a song that fits into also that topic, and it's a bit of an interesting story because, like I said, I didn't really have so much repertoire that kind of fit a more like feminist politics, and then I found on a kind of CD compilation of old commercial recordings from the Yiddish theater. It was called, like, I think, Women in the Yiddish Theater, and I found a song from the year 1921 on the women's right to vote in the United States, which came in 1920. And I thought, oh great, that's like a feminist song about women's voting rights. And I thought it was great, and it was a female singer named Clara Gold who performed it, and an actress also who performed it on the song. And I couldn't really understand all of it, and I brought it to, like, very big names in like Yiddish professors to try to decipher the recording, but it was a historical recording and some of the words were not decipherable. But also I found another recording by from the year that it was written, and found out also that it was written by Reuben Doctor, who was a very active Yiddish kind of cabaret songwriter, and he was the type of comedian who loved to make fun about his wife, basically, which is also not a new thing, right? Or it's not a new thing. It has a long tradition. And so that song, I found out, was actually written sarcastically, and the recording that I found had this introduction to it that was like a joke, where it's, oh, when you come home now and your wife is nagging, you just tell her, oh, you can vote now, you don't need to nag, so I was like, oh, what do I do with the song now? But then I had the sense that the initial recording that I heard was a kind of feminist reappropriation, because the song's name is Alle Weiber mögen stimmen, so all women can vote, and she sang Alle Weiber müssen stimmen, all women must vote. So I thought, oh, that's kind of feminist reappropriation, and why can't I do the same? And that's what I did. And it's in Yiddish, so just in case anyone is wondering if it sounds like English, yes, it does. Ich bin a größere Damenfreund, ich schwör euch bei mein Leben. Ich dank alle Männer heinte, was haben sie gegeben. Gleiche Recht zu voten, fein for every woman. Der Right zu vote, zu Recht zu sein, die Zeit ist schon gekommen. Als alle Weiber müssen stimmen, bei jeder Election, was wird kommen. A Kongressmann, a Präsident, liegt bei Weiber in die Hand. A Frau verkauft ihre Vote nicht warme Simmen. Freit sich Männer, sie soll reit, gewartet ihr a lange Zeit, als ihre Weiber müssen stimmen. A Captain wird sein Ruchele und Hansche wird sein der Mayor. Jenny wird sein a Diplomat und Jente a Goldwyn Mayer. Weiber haben jeden Job, wo's geben Information. Sie wollen fahr uns horen, fahr unser Liberation. Als alle Weiber müssen stimmen, bei jeder Election, was wird kommen. A Congressman, a Präsident, liegt bei Weiber in die Hand. A Frau verkauft ihre Wort nicht fahr mit Simmen. Freit sich Männer, sie soll reit, gewahrt hat ihr a lange Zeit, als ihre Weiber müssen stimmen. And now 100 years have passed, and see where it has brought us. Women in boards of companies, in parliaments and startups. But what have all these women done for care workers and migrants? It's time to change our strategy and join to fight all tyrants. Als alle Weiber müssen stimmen, bei jeder Election, was wird kommen. A Congressman, a Präsident, liegt bei Weiber in die Hände. A Frau verkauft ihre Wort nicht fahr mit Simmen. Freit sich Männer, sie soll reit, gewartet ihr a lange Zeit, als ihre Weiber mögen stimmen. Weil alle Weiber müssen stimmen, bei jeder Election, was wird kommen. A Congressman, a Präsident, liegt bei Weiber in die Hände. A Frau verkauft ihre Wort nicht fahr mit Simmen. Freit sich Männer, sie soll reit, gewartet ihr a lange Zeit, als ihre Weiber mögen stimmen.
Thank you. And to follow on from that, I mean, when I asked you earlier about the singers who had influenced you, one of the people you mentioned was Adrian Cooper, who was a really powerful Yiddish singer. And is there something different in being a female Yiddish singer?
Yeah, I think generally, I mean, women singers, also non-binary singers, also I think queer singers, also generally, like, I think different people that don't fit into either kind of into like hetero patriarchal structures in one way or another, have a different kind of affinity to at least particular repertoires and particular traditions of Yiddish song. I mean, first of all, there is this this phenomenon that is sometimes referred to as like queer Yiddishkeit, which is has been also called, I think it's a direct quote, is like the postmodern marriage of queerness and Yiddish culture, which of course, I mean, there is a long also tradition and history of certain kind of queering happening in Yiddish culture and performance culture. Drag, for example, is not a new phenomenon, Yiddish drag, but in general there's kind of like there's been an affinity to specifically also a lot of queer identifying folks who identify with the kind of like the marginalized aspects also of Yiddish culture and kind of the diasporic aspects of it, and now speaking as kind of more a cishet woman, I would say, I also have a certain affinity also to Yiddish, I would say, on this level of, if we think about Yiddish culture as being also feminized versus kind of the more masculinist, Hebraist ideas of kind of yeah, I know this is a bit like stereotypical, but like the Zionist militarism was also very like it's very masculinist in some ways, and specifically also in relation to as I said, kind of more like orally transmitted folk song repertoire that is narrating also experiences under patriarchy. There's definitely a different kind of affinity there that yeah, I think is particularly special. Maybe also another thing that I enjoy doing more and more, and that's also part of this kind of expanding the boundaries of what are revolutionary Yiddish songs. I've in recent years started to set more poetry also to song, and specifically also Yiddish women's poetry and modernist Yiddish women's poetry. And you know, that was a revolutionary act also for Yiddish women poets in the early 20th century to write this very also transgressive and poetry, you know, and then yeah, it's not about like workers come together. It has different themes, but it's just as revolutionary, or revolutionary in a very different and very interesting way. So I would like to share a song on that. Yeah. It's a setting of mine by a poem by Anna Margolin, who was a very well-known Yiddish modernist poet writing in the early 20th century, and it's called Langsam und lichtig, so unhurried and or like slowly and radiantly or brightly. And oh yeah, I don't need to really explain it because you can read along, but it's a love poem. I think of it as erotic in a weird modernist way. I don't know, that I can say. Langsam und lichtig hast du dein schweren Stern zugebeugen zu mein Stern. Bist du versunken mit dein schwarzen Feuer in mein blauen Feuer? Bist du versunken mit dein schwarzen Feuer in mein blauen Feuer? Ay, ja, da, da. Langsam und lichtig hast du dein schweren Stern zugebeugen zu mein Stern. Bist du versunken mit dein schwarzen Feuer in mein blauen Feuer? Bist du versunken mit dein schwarzen Feuer in mein blauen Feuer? Ay, ja, da, da, 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 ja, ja, da, da, ja, da, da, ja, da, da, ja, da, da, ja, da. Und mein Zimmer ist geworden voll mit Sommer. Und mein Zimmer ist geworden voll mit Nacht. Ob ich meine leuchtende, weinende Augen zugemacht. Ob ich gewähnt still in mein späten Sommer.
Wow. Thank you. We've covered a lot of ground, but the last couple of questions I want to ask relate very much to, well, the very dangerous developments in recent years, and that's the global rise of the far right. And I wanted to ask you specifically about Austria. How is the Jewish community in Austria responding to the Austrian political situation, where you have a very strong far-right party that actually got the most votes in the last election, a party that is racist, anti-refugee, and also pro-Zionist. So how do the Jewish community that experience what it experienced in the past, how do they relate to this development?
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, in a lot of places we witness Jewish communities kind of becoming, sometimes like in the US, there's like a Jewish right that is embracing also the far right, or even the Jewish mainstream that is, I don't know, suddenly if Elon Musk obviously does a Hitler salute, then saying that's an awkward gesture and things like that, like this is happening currently. In Austria, I would say it's interesting, even though the community is quite more conservative leaning, there is still a very strong taboo on the far right party because of kind of living right in a place where the Nazi past is felt also so immediately, and because the party is really, I mean, it is a direct continuation of the Nazi party, and a lot of people are very much like they have a lot of these far-right fraternities, like German nationalist fraternities, people who, I don't know, sing these like Nazi songs of, even like Holocaust, kind of like making fun of the Holocaust or things like that. So it's really clear, it's very obvious that it's there, even though they try to obviously cozy up to the Jewish community and to the state of Israel, and so that's definitely, and kind of through this, instrumentalizing Jewish pain and Jewish memory to go against migrants and refugees and Muslim minorities, basically. What I find a bit bothersome at the Jewish community's response is that also the self-declared Jewish left, which is not, in my eyes, really a Jewish left. I wouldn't call them Jewish left. That's confusing. It's more like the liberal wing of the mainstream Jewish community that is still very Zionist, but they're also they're so caught in this narrative of the whole world is so anti-Semitic and everyone is against us. Not to say that anti-Semitism isn't a problem and it isn't also growing, but for example, they staged a protest against Herbert Kickl, who is the new kind of head of the far-right party, who won the last elections. They're not in government now because they couldn't form a government, so we have luckily not a government with the far-right in it, but they're the strongest party. And the Jewish student union staged a protest where they kind of projected Kickl, this person, would have deported us. And I felt like, well, but it's not, we're not the people that are being deported right now. And it's really important to say that and to really be clear about, who is really right now at risk of kind of, who is like dying in refugee camps and who is, being spat at on the streets by the far right and who is, I don't know, planting fires at mosques and things like that. So I think it's very important to be clear on that, and that doesn't mean not also talking about anti-Semitism and the fact that the far right is a real threat also to Jewish communities, but it's just not that's just not the target right now, not because they like Jews, but because it's right now a different kind of political moment. It's not politically convenient for them. I think so. I think it will. I think it can turn. Yeah, I think you're right. And that's exactly the point. That's why we need to, fight the far right now at this moment. Also because it can turn in any moment. But that's why I think it's a huge problem that that some parts of the Jewish community are also feeding into some of the very anti-Muslim rhetoric. Not to say that there's anti-Muslim sentiment in the Jewish community, there's anti-Jewish sentiment in Muslim communities. It's all there, but we still need to find ways to kind of mobilize together to fight the far right. And so that's definitely, yeah.
It's very, very important, and sometimes I think the fascists are a bit more versatile than the left is, and the fascists are able to attack many different communities at the same time. They don't replace targets; they accumulate them. But have you yourself been targeted by the far right, either the general far right or the sort of far right-wing Zionists?
I mean, have I been targeted? I've been. Once there was like a fake profile of me made on Twitter by an obvious neo-Nazi. It was also funny. It was like someone who insulted. It was a tweet, and then it was like. It was really anti-Semitic. It was like about my nose and about other. It was really, really anti-Semitic. But then it was also saying like, buy my album with only 3 chords, and it's like, oh, the person listened to my music, and and it's like insulting me. Then I'm like, well, yeah, I play like folk music in a very like I'm not like doing a lot of reharmonizing, but I'll take it. That's okay. And was even like quoting something from like In Kampf. It was really absurd, honestly. That this neo-Nazi was obviously listened to my album and then thought of ways to write terribly anti-Semitic things. Other than that, I face a lot of I face a lot of backlash for many years already in terms of activism. In solidarity with Palestinians, anti-occupation for a long time. That I've been active on that for maybe like the past 10 years, and so already long now before the annihilation started in Gaza. I've been facing a lot of backlash basically, and it's been difficult, let's say it like that. I was already, I think in 2021, I was kind of publicly called anti-Semitic by people that I'd grown up with in the Jewish youth movement, and also by the Antifa, because that's an interesting fact, that the Antifa in German-speaking countries, parts of it, are what we call like anti-Deutsch, anti-German. Also in Austria we call them that way. So they're actually kind of in a very strange way, pro-Israel. They post like images of IDF fighter jet flying over Auschwitz and things like that. Like that's their image of anti-fascism, and they really, they posted something online about a speech that I had done that was not about Palestine. It was kind of an anti-racist solidarity thing after this shooting that had happened in Germany, and it was basically because I was speaking also about white privilege. They didn't like that because in their eyes also white Jews in Europe are not white, and things like that. And I was also speaking about class privilege, and then they just wrote, without saying anything who I was and that I was Jewish, they just wrote, a speaker talked about Jewish privilege and Jews are rich and things like that. And it's like, no, that's not what I said. So things like that have happened. Yeah, and then it's still, it's nothing then compared to what other people face, and what a lot of people have been facing also in Germany especially, and also what a lot of Palestinians face just by virtue of being Palestinian or saying they are Palestinian. So I think that's also important to kind of say, to relativize, to not say, oh, it's so terrible and painful. Yeah, I have another song. But I'm also looking at the
the last thing was about how you've been able to use your work in relation to Israel, Palestine.
Yeah, so before I answer that, I am going to sing another song. Sorry, but I'm also keeping an eye on the time so that we all have dinner. But I'll just sing a song that I sang at these anti-far right government protests. So it's a good protest tradition. Maybe you want to take it up for the next government. Let's see. It's called the Thursday protest. So every Thursday you have a demonstration, and that was against the far right coalition in the early 2000s. And then we had another one of those coalitions, 2017 to 2019. And so I was invited to perform there, and I rewrote the very well-known, or like among like a niche of people, but a Jewish anti-police, anti-Tsarist song, Daloi Polizei, and I rewrote it against those people. And what was funny was a week later, the government fell because of this corruption scandal. We had this video with a fake oligarch's niece on Ibiza. It's also a good tip if anyone wants to, get rid of some far-right leaders. You need to get them to Ibiza and say all things on hidden camera. Okay, so that happened, and the government fell, and I felt like, wow, this is like a week earlier I came up on stage and I said, like, down with this guy, and then he was down with the government. And now what's interesting about it is, like, I don't really know so much about Tsar Nikolai, and a lot of people don't know so much about the Tsar Nikolai, but also now people don't really know so much anymore about these far right leaders. So they're kind of like history. They've become history, like the Tsar. We unfortunately have new far right leaders. That's the problem. That's what's frustrating. But yeah, I'll sing it. It kind of became a hymn of the Thursday protests. Oh yeah, it's a famous mashup also. In alle Gassen, wo man geht, hört man Sabastofkes. Jünglich, mädlich, Kinder und Cage mussten von Prebovkes. Jünglich, mädlich, Kinder und Cage mussten von Prebovkes. Genug schon Brüder, Haare wenn, genug schon Borgenleien. Mach da Sabastofke, hallo, mir Brüder sich befreien. Mach da Sabastofke, hallo, mir Brüder sich befreien. Brüder und Schwester, lass mir sich geben die Hand. Lass mir Nikolaikelen zerbrechen die Wand. Hey, hey, Daloi Polizei, Daloi Samederjavitz, Vrassei. Brüder und Schwester, lass mir sich nicht irzen, lass mir Nikolaikelen die Ohrlech verkürzen. Hey, hey, Daloi Polizei, Daloi Samederjavitz, Vrassei. Hey, hey, Daloi Polizei, Daloi Samederjavitz, Vrassei. Brüder und Schwester, lass mir gehen zusammen, lass mir Nikolaikelen begraben mit der Mammen. Hey, hey, Daloi Polizei, Daloi Samederjavitz, Vrassei. Hey, hey, Daloi Polizei, Daloi Samederjavitz, Vrassei. Nicht not geführt, a Wegele mit Mist, eint ist geworden, a Kapitalist. Hey, hey, Daloi Polizei, Daloi Samederjavitz, Vrassei. Usaken Gendarmen, a Rupf von die Pferd, der russische Kaiser liegt schon in der Erd. Hey, hey, Daloi Polizei, Daloi Samederjavitz, Vrassei. I'll do it one time in German. Brüder und Schwestern, gehen wir Hand in Hand und treiben diese Rechtsregierung raus aus unserem Land. Wir wollen keine Grenzen und keinen Sicherheitsapparat und schon gar keinen protofaschistischen Ethnonationalstaat. Hey, hey, nieder mit HC und nieder mit der neuen ÖVP. Raus auf die Straße, trotz Schnee und Niederschlag, denn es ist wieder Donnerstag. Hey, hey, nieder mit HC und nieder mit der neuen ÖVP. Raus auf die Straße, trotz Schnee und Niederschlag, heute ist Straches letzter Tag. Hey, hey, daloj Polizei, daloj same državjec frasej. Hey, hey, daloj Polizei, daloj same državjec frasej.
One of my absolute favourites. And lastly, the question about how have you been able to use your work in music in relation to Israel, Palestine, and Zionism?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I've started to use it more. I always used it very implicitly in a way, kind of through this kind of diasporis that I was trying to. I thought bringing people Yiddish culture and radical revolutionary Yiddish culture is also a way to also offer them different ways of being Jewish in the present day that are kind of compatible also with solidarity with Palestinians, for example, and really, I mean, I also just think that kind of nationalist identification is bad in itself. Like it's not a very deep way of kind of engaging with culture anyways, you know. So I think also for the sake of kind of Jewish life, it's something that I would like people to disinvest from. But specifically in relation to Palestine, Israel, I've started to use, you know, bring a lot of that into my performances and trying to kind of promote a kind of diasporic consciousness. And I've also, you know, done more. I've performed at protests. We kind of had, you know, started organizing also vigils in Vienna that were also vigils for both victims in Gaza and victims of October 7th. That was also something that was important to me, specifically right after October 7th, to have a space that also kind of, you know, holds the pain also of different people being killed. It's a kind of Jewish Palestinian group that we have. Nowadays we do a lot of also kind of just protests against kind of Austria's complicity in genocide and for a ceasefire. And I sometimes perform there, but I'm also trying to more, you know, curate some music in there and get other artists to perform. A wonderful Palestinian singer, Marwan Abado, for example, who has performed a lot. Also a Kurdish singer who I perform with a lot. And trying to create different spaces. And maybe I'll just briefly plug a project that I've been a part of, also with Josh Waletsky, who I already mentioned, which is called Lieder mit Palästina, Yiddish Songs for Palestine. And it's a compilation of 17 new Yiddish songs written in solidarity with Palestine. There hasn't really been a collection of 17 new Yiddish songs kind of as a compilation being published ever, and now the first one that is coming out is specifically in solidarity with Palestinians. So I think it's a really incredible thing, and it's also very different songs that take very different roots and use different languages, and it's different voices. It's gonna come out once we've finished the booklet and the graphics, and I'm just thinking what is still on the to-do list. There's still a lot to do, but it's almost out. It will be out, and the whole thing is fundraising for two cultural organizations in Gaza, the Free Gaza Circus and Delia Arts, that do cultural work in Gaza, basically. And so that's been one of the main things. And I think, wer hat sie geschrieben? A lot of people, different people wrote songs. Yeah, 17 different people wrote songs. Or I guess Josh Woletsky wrote 2 songs, but different people are singing, yeah. Are singing on. No, it's really, I mean, it was a burst of creativity also, because a lot of people felt there needed to be a response, yeah.
That sounds like a really brilliant project that we really all need to support. This has been just such a wonderful thing to have the chance to interview you. So I will say thank you to you, but I know you've got another song.
I have a song. Thank you very much for interviewing me. I think, Ben, we're going to skip the one after that, right? Yeah, good, okay. Thank you. Thank you also to Ben for doing the slides. I just realized now I need to say, now is the time for the thank yous. And thank you to Sam for the sound. It's really wonderful. And thank you to all the people that have been organizing this, so Talia and Zissel and everyone who made this possible. So mostly Ben, also not just for the slides, but for organizing the whole thing. You've done more than just make slides. But yeah, I won't say too much. This is a song that is also on this album, Lieder mit Palästina, and it's written by Josh Woletsky. It was written actually dedicated to Sveta Kundish, who's a wonderful Yiddish singer who is currently also recovering from a stroke. So it's someone to keep in your hearts and minds for her recovery. And it's a song with kind of the pain of when your own community is starting to say very racist things, dehumanizing things. Basically, comes from the pain of seeing how Jewish communities are dehumanizing Palestinians, and it's based on a Yiddish proverb that is called "Der was grobt a groef far jenem falt arein allein." So the person that digs a grave for the other falls in themselves, basically, and that's what the song is based on. But yeah, there is a translation, so I won't have to worry about that. Ein Stück von Herz. Ihr schreit, als seinen jene nicht kein ganze Leid, nor ois geheulte Gufim ohne Schommes. Ich lehn eure Wörter und ich kenn sie nicht benehmen und es reißt sich ob ein Stück von Herz. Wir sind aufgewachsen in derselben Weg, geführt in einem kinderschen Milchommes. Nur Cheritz deire Keules und ich kenn sie nicht benehmen und es reißt sich ob ein Stück von Herz. Ich hab wenig wo zu sein, da nicht sitz, dort nicht steh, ich such mein Welt, mein Dor. Es mond bei mir in Kopf, doch's nicht tracht, doch's nicht sorg, es brennt in Meul das Wort. Ihr grobt als Zeus und grobt als Zeus a tiefe Grub und meint ihr, als es ist Variane. Wir stehen sich beim Scheidweg zwischen Menschlichkeit und Tume und es reißt sich ob ein Stück von Herz. Ich habe wenig wo zu sein, da nicht sitz, dort nicht steh, ich such mein Welt, mein Dor. Es mond bei mir in Kopf, doch's nicht tracht, doch's nicht sog, es brennt in Meul das Wort. Ihr grobt als euch und grobt als euch a tiefe Grub und meinen meint ihr, als es ist Vienna. Wir scheiden sich beim Scheidweg zwischen Menschlichkeit und Tumme und es reißt sich ob ein Stück von Herz. Okay, I'm quickly just going to do one more song so we can all get to eat. I'm sorry that I talked so much, so then that, you know, yeah, it's been long, obviously, with talking and singing and everything. Okay, this is a song, it's a translated song from Georg Kreisler, who was a very well-known Viennese Jewish cabaret singer. He wrote in German. He's very loved by Viennese people all around, and he fled in 1938 to the United States, where he also stole a song by what's his name, Poisoning Pigeons in the Park. Who wrote that again? Tom Lehrer. Yeah, he stole a song from Tom Lehrer, never admitted to it. But yeah, he returned in the 50s, which was not a very nice time to return to Vienna as a Jewish artist, but kind of stayed and became really, you know, part of the fabric of the city. And he has one album. It's called The Non-Aryan Arias, and it's very much there. He plays a lot with his, like, when we would say he's Yidling, you know, he's like speaking German, like Yiddish inflected. It's sometimes not so clear. And there was a song on there, it's called Ich fühl mich nicht zu Hause. I don't feel at home here. And you can read along the text. I mean, I translated it with a lot of help by Dan Kahn, who's, you know, obviously the master of translation of these kind of things. And it's also really an honor for me because he performs the song also a lot. He has it also on his new record, so I'm very honored by that. This is Nicht heimisch by Georg Kreisler, who, I guess should have written also some songs in Yiddish, but now verteidigt und verbessert, we can say. Yeah, so translated and made better. I don't know. That's the translation. Besucht hab ich mein Schwester in Berlin. Sie will, ich soll auf Fäbig dort dahin. Ihr Mann ist jetzt gestorben, Aschlemil. Hat sie gekriegt, Jerusche, viel zu viel. Sie hat da dir groß genug für mir. Sie kennt da nur die beste Leid. Drei, dann sag ich, nein. Es fühlt sich da nicht heimisch. Sei Meuchel, als ich geh schon. Ich schreib dir bald ein Brief. Ich geh vorn zu meinem Bruder, kein New York, wo's lebt schon Jahren dorten, ohne Sorg. Sein jährliche Parnosse, 1 Million. Will mich haben wie a Kompagnon. Sein Business ist gegangen wie geschmiert. Ich wollte es gern mit ihm geführt. Nur als das Salz ist auf Kosovo planiert. Da hab ich plötzlich klar gespürt. Es fühlt sich da nicht heimisch. Was geht mir an die Yankees? A viele, wenn ich Geld verliere, es fühlt sich da nicht heimisch. Ich los die Business dir. geflogen zu mein Schwager, Moishe Green, was wohnt in Buenos Aires, Argentin. Hat a hacienda und a Pferd und pflanzt sich dort Bananes in der Erd. Und Senioritas sennen do voran, nor will ich nicht mit sie nicht gehen. Hab ich eingepackt mein Chamodan und sich gesegnet und gewehen. Es fühlt sich da nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch. Was darf ich Senioritas und Sonnenschein und a bläuen Jan? Es fühlt sich da nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch. Und jeder Gaucho sät, als ich nicht von dannen stamm. Ich hab Lutzem gut verstanden. Von mein Stamm spring ich auf ein Schiff und übern Jam. Also bin ich gefahren, sehr schnell in mein emestigen Heimland, Israel. Nur ist das nicht gewesen sehr klug, da gibt man mir nicht kein Kredit. Hab von der Ackerarbeit schon genug und alle reden nur Ivrit. Jetzt fühlt sich da nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch. Ich spüre sie in alle Zellen, Gott, das soll sein mein Heim. Es fühlt sich da nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch, nicht heimisch. Was kann ich weiter wählen und wohin soll ich gehen? Also komm ich mit Unglück und mit Glück in mein beliebten Städtel da zurück. A Jid wie ich wär da nicht so gescheunt, man hat sich zu mein Fällen zugewohnt. Jetzt guckt man mich a bissl schademdick, bin wie a Fremder zwischen Freund. Schmeichelt jeder loschen Hornig, wer liebt, was mit Hornischt haben Feind. Jetzt fühlt sich da ja heimisch, ja heimisch, ja heimisch. Also sich schleppen Goles ist wie Goles nur verkehrt. Weil mir ist da heimisch, da heimisch, da heimisch. Da kann man mich benutzen und da geh ich in Dreht. Thank you. Enjoy your food.
Thank you so much. That was so amazing. If you want to give it up one more time for Isabel and David and Ben and Rob, it was amazing. Yep. I'm going to try to be so snappy because I know we're all hungry. So just thank you to the Brighton Reading Room at One Church. A couple things about the space that we're in. During the cafe's open hours, you can browse and borrow the books over there. It's a really radical library. It's amazing. I recommend looking at it before you go. They also have an event on the 2nd of May. It's a protest comics launch party, so there's posters scattered around. You can see info on that. We have vegan food over here from Aroma, a local Palestinian cafe, so stick around for that. And at the back, at the table, there's Isabel's CDs. There's a book on the Jewish Labor Bund that David mentioned, and you can donate to Ele Elna Elak at the back as well. So thank you so much. Go eat, and yeah, thank you for being here.